Let's begin here. The 95 Libyans who were arrested at a suspected illegal military camp near White River in Mpumalanga have been deported. A large police contingency was deployed to the Kruger International Airport, where they boarded an aircraft to Benghazi in Libya. Now, on Thursday, the National Prosecuting Authority announced the withdrawal of the case against the Libyans who had been charged with contravening the Immigration Act. Meanwhile, the Home Affairs Minister, Dr. Leon Schreiber, has praised his department's officials for ensuring a smooth deportation process. Leon has also mentioned that the Libyan government paid for the departure expenses. Well, immigration law expert Ashraf Essop joins us now via video link to weigh in on the deportation of the 95 Libyan nationals. Thank you so much for your time. So this case, has again raised questions around just how secure our borders are in the country. What do you make, firstly, around the circumstances of how these 95 Libyan nationals entered the country?
So from what we can gather, they were not smuggled in through one of the road borders. They obviously landed at a port of entry in possession of a passport, which passport had a study visa. All of that was legal and legitimate. So that again tells you that the procedure preceding such entry into the Republic must have been vetted and approved of by our embassy and by our officials, as well as the officials in charge of the airline. You will appreciate that since 2010, the airlines have to send an advance passenger manifest to the Department of Home Affairs with the names of all the passengers, and they basically pre-cleared. And if they're not pre-cleared, and if there is a problem, then at the port of entry, they would be detained and they will be informed that they're either illegal or denied entry. And then there's a whole internal process in terms of Section 8 of the Immigration Act that follows. The fact that Section 8 didn't appear in these proceedings must inform us that all of the checks and balances before entry were observed, and in fact that the visas themselves were proper. There was nothing illegal or unusual in those visas. So that's regarding the port of entry. As I say, from what I understand, there was no jumping of the border to get into the Republic, and the exact nature of their having breached the conditions of their visa was not made public. We don't know in what manner they might have been charged in terms of the Immigration Act. But certainly deportation follows. It's an involuntary departure of a foreigner who is in the Republic unlawfully or in contravention of the Immigration Act. And there's a whole procedure that needs to be observed before they are removed from the Republic.
Should we then be concerned that, certain information was not clarified, just given the level of concern around, the 95 men that were in the country, but also the circumstances surrounding the training that they were receiving in the country at the time? Because now we know, when they appeared in court, they were actually charged with contravening the Immigration Act.
But those charges, as we understand, were removed or withdrawn following representations by the defense team. And I think the so-called prima facie case of the breach of the Immigration Act was once again not made available to the public. And I think that might be the correct procedure, because the department doesn't have to constantly report to the public. Of course, it has a duty to observe the laws itself and, if necessary, report and answer questions in the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee. I think the reasons that the department may not have released any further information could possibly be due to they don't want copycats of this kind of thing, and they have not finished their investigations regarding how the officials of the department had issued these visas, and indeed the so-called school in which they attended for these studies might or may not have been investigated, and we don't know where we are in that. But there's certainly no reasons having been given to us. I must stress that the Constitutional Court has already dealt with the situation of the constitutional rights of foreigners who were deported, and that was way back in 2001 in Mohammed versus the President of the Republic. And you'd recall that Mohammed was a Tanzanian national. He was sought by the US for certain crimes in Dar es Salaam. He was traced to Cape Town, and he was living under an assumed name and a false passport. So here he was not here as an as an asylum seeker. He was here on false documentation. And the Constitutional Court was very clear. It drew a distinction between extradition and deportation. Extradition involves three elements: the act of the sovereign state, a request by one state for the delivery of the alleged criminal, and the delivery of that person requested for the purposes of trial or sentencing. Deportation is really a unilateral act in terms of the Immigrations Act of deporting a person in order to get rid of that person for whatever reasons, bearing in mind that the purpose of deportation is achieved when such person leaves the Republic. And the destination is very, very important that we understand. The destination of the deportee is irrelevant for the deportation purposes. Why I'm emphasizing this is that the applicants could have objected, if they were enemies of the state of Libya, to have been sent back there, possibly to their deaths or torture. You know, there is the principle of non-refoulement, but this was made very, very clear in terms of the Constitutional Court. In that case, the court found that the Immigrations Act didn't permit the deportation back to the United States, where there was a possibility that the person would have faced the death penalty, and that involves capital punishment, where capital punishment is a possibility. The Constitution prohibits South Africa from knowingly participating or in any way imposing or facilitating the imposition of cruel, inhuman or degrading punishment.
Mr. Essop, I'd like to thank you for your time and, of course, just clarifying that situation around these particular nationals. Thank you so much for that. Of course, that was Mr. Ashraf Essop, an immigration law expert.